What is up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone, we return with Ethan of Primitive Man. Thank you for your time today. Great to talk to you again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, bizarre turn of events since we spoke on the Full of Hell tour, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But the last time we spoke, we were discussing mainly on the splits that you did with Unearthly Trance and Hell, but now you have the new album Immersion coming out. Do you consider this just a follow up to what we heard on Caustic, or is this like a brand new beginning for Primitive Man in a way?
I would just say that it's just like a. I mean, everybody says this shit a more evolved version of what we were doing. I feel like they're the best set of songs we've ever written. Real collaborative effort. We took a lot of time to write these, so I'm real proud of it. I think it's the best thing I've ever played on.
That's awesome. What were you looking at, like the previous records at all, or were you kind of just like thinking forward only?
Just thinking forward. I mean, we know what we want to do. Get heavier and with every release and try new things. So, just trying to continue doing that.
hmm I talked upon it a lot on the last interview, but did maybe doing the splits with Unearthly Trance and Hell at all maybe influence on the making of this record as well? Like, did it teach you new things to incorporate?
So the Unearthly Trance split, that song was written during the and recorded during the Caustic sessions, and the songs from the Hell split were written while we were writing these songs for the full length.
hmm
Um, so no, we do what we want all the time, man.
Yeah. Oh, so did maybe the split with Hell like serve as maybe like a clear preview on the direction that this album headed into?
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Yeah.
hmm I've
Yeah.
noticed, like, was there kind of like a preconceived idea on how you wanted Immersion to sound like, or was there kind of like a lot of improvising involved?
No, not a lot of improv. We knew what we were trying to do
hmm
with this one.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
there
we
was.
spent we spent like 3 years writing the songs, like in between tours and stuff. You know what I mean? Like we jammed the songs out. It took a lot of time with them. This is probably the most amount of time we've had to put together a set of songs. Also, even though we were doing all the touring, just because it took 3 years. So we kind of knew what we were going for to a degree. I mean, it's hard to explain with us. It's like if every one of these songs would have ended up being 13 minutes or something, we would have just rolled forward with it, but it just kind of ended up coming out the way that it did.
Yeah, I was beyond shocked when I saw that you had a song on this album that was 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, are they turning punk all of a sudden?
The first record has some short songs like that with some D beats in it and shit.
Yeah.
So,
Um, but one thing I was curious about is being that you worked on this for a course of 3 years. Is what we're hearing on this album like the first initial take on how it was originally written, or did the songs kind of like change a lot over a span of time?
they changed a lot over a span of time. Some of the songs are songs combined into one song with some shit on like the cutting room floor kind of idea.
hmm Is that the lifer?
Um, no, the Lifer was written as is. The last song, Consumption, is a bunch of different songs that we kind of messed around with. There's a song on there called Foul that is like that as well.
hmm Well, aren't you always worried that like maybe the original way that you wrote something will be a B side one day, just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
No.
Oh, that was the best concrete answer I've ever gotten. I loved it. Um, but like, do you find it harder? I don't know if this is maybe like a priority or maybe even a concept for Primitive Man, but like, do you find it maybe like the harder or the longer that you're working on something, the harder it is to kind of like maintain a moment or that spark in a way?
No, I think it's important to be able to set things down and make sure that they're exactly how you want them to be. I've done a bunch of shit where we just went forward with the first initial way it was going, and then later on are playing these songs and looking at them like, fuck, I wish we wouldn't have made this decision. So this one is not, was a lot of like taking a step back and looking at it and really crafting it together. It's kind of a different approach.
Oh, so there's like no regrets at all or nothing that you would like change about it. That's impressive.
I mean, not really, not on this one. There's a bunch of shit on our earlier material that I wish that we wouldn't have done. But I think that everything leading up to this record, we know we did a lot of experimenting and a bunch of splits and a double LP and like all of this stuff kind of all over the place. So, you know, this is like a really concentrated, focused take on what we have done. So I'd say there's less improvisation now than there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like we really found our way playing together, and we've grown a lot as a band from doing so much touring and shit. So I think that it's just kind of a, we're starting to lock it in as a group more so than before, you know?
So do you feel that if like somebody was just getting on board with Primitive Man and like just discovering you guys, that this would be the album for people to discover you guys on?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, that I admire like the honesty you have in your work, and I'd imagine like taking a step. Like I've noticed it with like artists that sometimes taking a step back from stuff is sometimes like the hardest thing for them to do in a way.
Yeah, man. I think that if we wouldn't have been touring so much, that it would have been harder to do that. But we also had a bunch of shit going on in our lives, and so I don't know. It was a really hard process to put this record together, but rewarding in the end. The most rewarding
Yeah.
it's been.
Well, the harder the work is, the more rewarding it is, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's what they say.
Unless you're Guns N' Roses and you write your greatest hit in 3 hours. So,
Yeah,
um,
dark.
but what's funny is like like in order to when you're like stepping back, like is there like a pinnacle moment that happens that where you have to like put the song down for a while? Like does something have to happen in order for you to be like, okay, put it down, come back later?
Well, so what we do is that I'll have an idea, or someone will have an idea. We'll come in there, communicate to one another, jam on it, put our part on it, try to do that with as many pieces as everyone has at the time, record it, set it down, come back the next week, run over that, change anything if we don't like it then. If we're okay with how it is and it feels finished, we just leave it, work on another song, and then another song, and then we'll go back and we'll play all three of those, and then we'll listen to them from like a iPhone recording or whatever, and then kind of talk about it, and then we start doing shit where we're like pulling things out and combining things. Sometimes the way that it was originally was just fine. It's just a lot of that like
Yeah.
was
It's
the whole thing.
yeah. It's like art kind of comes out of art in a way, right? Like with the making of each song, you may have like a new idea on how you could bring it into a previous song you wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at the entire Primitive Man catalog from Scorn to Caustic to Immersion, like is it almost kind of do you look at these albums like a representation of who you are? Do you almost kind of look at the Primitive Man albums as like a self-portrait?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about my life and the times I was living in and what was going on at that time. It's all real life shit.
Mm-hmm. So,
So
so the music is very personal. It's not like there's really like a lot of like outside inspiration that could influence a Primitive Man song.
no,
Mm-hmm.
no.
When in order to get like inspired to write, do you almost kind of like have to put yourself in a position in order to like get the creative energy to flow, or does inspiration sometimes just come out of the blue?
It just depends. Sometimes it just kind of comes out of the blue. Other times I have to sit there and ponder on some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever I need to do to get it done. I mean, I'm always creating all the time, so it's just like just a part of waking up every day for me. Like there isn't a day that passes now, especially where I'm not working on something creative.
Yeah, I'd imagine that like the way with the world pretty much ending right now, that like it has to maybe influence some stuff for even the next Primitive Man album, right?
We haven't been able to get together, but I'm sure that when we do, yeah, I'll have some ideas.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing that, especially with the style that you guys have. I don't mean to pigeonhole you guys by any means, but like guys, a lot of people characterize you guys as doom, and I know a lot of people who are using you guys on their playlists to describe the times.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, and another question I have for you really is when you're like Do you find it easier to maybe come up with ideas when you're in the company of your other bandmates, or do you sometimes need to be alone, kind of like isolation? I've always considered to be a great fuel for art. Do you find it easier to come up with ideas when you're more alone?
Uh, Lyrics when I'm by myself, songs. I like to work with them and do this shit with them. It's more fun that way. Um, because Primitive Man has really turned into like a real collaborative thing more so than ever. And so I feel like we are at our best when we do it together. But lyrically, because it's such personal content, I usually do all that separately and on my own.
Hmm. Do you try to like leave the content open to interpretation, or do you want listeners to sort of see things from your point of view?
I think that I'm like vague enough to where you could leave it open to interpretation.
Mhm. But you wouldn't hesitate on explaining it to a listener if they asked you like what this particular track meant.
No. No, I mean, I'd rather that they go through Liz at your split and do it that way. But if someone decides to stop me at a show or something and wants an in-depth explanation, I guess I would give it to them if the mood was right. Not.
Yeah. Huge shout out to Liz. I mean, she's great at explaining the music and everything like that, especially with what she writes. So that's a you could just, if anybody asks, just point your finger and refer to her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get stopped and have to explain some like traumatic event shit to somebody that I don't know, just like that. It's not, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that.
Well, when you play the material live and you're re-executing it, does it kind of almost put you back in that particular time?
Yeah, it does for a while. Eventually after the songs start to get to be older, I'm not feeling exactly the same as I was when it was all fresh.
Hmm.
But it just, man, I guess the best answer for that is it just depends on the night and the vibe and how things are going. There are nights where I'm like really feeling what I'm saying and what it's all about, and then there are nights where I'm just like enjoying the loud amps and mosh pits and shit.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I'd imagine that the songs develop new meaning as they get older. I mean, art is life in itself, so as it gets older, it develops new meaning in itself, right?
Yeah, so it's like, I might have like a real bad memory with what I'm talking about with a song, but then I might remember a time that we were playing this specific song somewhere and like it was just an amazing show or something unique happened, and then I'll probably just start to associate it with that. It's just kind of those things. This shit evolves the longer you play it and the further you try to spread it.
Hmm. Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is we talked upon it last time, and I actually made a mistake in the last interview. Five Finger Death Punch is not from Colorado.
I know, I remember that, and I later on I looked that up and I was like, shit. I'm glad they're not.
Yeah, your look of despair, that's probably one of my favorite interview moments ever.
Yeah, dude, that shit. No, thank you.
But I actually just interviewed the band In the Company of Serpents, who
Oh yeah.
yeah, they send their regards, and as well as like Spectral Voice and so many like other great bands from Colorado. I'm just curious to like, and obviously there pretty much there's no such thing as a scene now with the world that we're living in, but in your region of Colorado, especially for the style of music that you play, it almost seems like that's the capital of it, right?
What do you mean?
Like for like the quote unquote doom style with you guys and In the Company of Serpents and Spectral Voice and so many other great bands of that style, it almost seems like Colorado is kind of like the doom capital at the moment, right?
Um, I never really thought about it. I cannot. I am not informed enough to give you a real answer on that. We do have a lot of great doom here and a lot of good bands. Our music scene is one of the best in the country, if you ask me. But I don't know if we have the most. I don't know if we're the doom capital.
Yeah, I've always said that Colorado and Oregon need to go head to head.
It's just a sister city. Everybody's friends.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And one other question is, when I saw you at the Full of Hell show, that was actually my first time seeing Primitive Man. I sadly missed you guys before that, but glad I got to see it this time. But is there maybe a similar energy into playing live than when you are songwriting, or is playing live a completely separate scenario altogether?
Yeah, it's pretty similar energy. maybe a little bit more psychotic when we're writing it.
I would think it's the opposite.
No, because you have to keep yourself together in a public situation.
I mean, that's interesting because a lot of people say that the studio's so static and so like structured that like you're more like in place when you're in the studio, and when you're live you can just go all out on stage.
Oh no, dude, not this time. I mean, I can. It's just a different. It's a different thing. So when I'm like recording the vocals on a record, I might have some tears flowing. I am fucking spitting. I am seething. I'm like really thinking about it. Like really thinking about it in a way that I can't in a room full of people. So it's like a little bit more unhinged in an environment like that where nobody can see what that looks like. When we're playing live, it's aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when I'm done going fucking nuts up there, I still have to pack up my cables and my gear and my pedal board and my guitar and shit.
Yeah.
Like I still have responsibilities when that's over. When I'm done in the studio, I might be done for the day. I can like have a lay down.
Mm-hmm. So the way that we're seeing you perform the material live is almost a completely different side of you than when you were making it.
I don't know that it's a different side. It's just a more controlled side.
Fair enough.
Like I'm 36 fucking years old, dude. I can go up there and sing about really traumatic shit, but I know what's gonna happen after that. I'm gonna have to load up all my stuff, put it in the van, get paid, get in the van, probably drive for a bunch of fucking hours, and do other grown man ass shit. So it's just like that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's so hard to explain unless you do it all the time.
Yeah, of course.
And it takes its own specific toll. I mean, there might be nights, like, if we're having a rough go at it out there or something where I'm, like, pretty fucking crazy. There have been nights where I've fucking wept when we played or, like, done some insane-ass shit. But for the most part, it's not like that. I'm trying to, like, display my art in a dignified way.
So. In a professional way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, but in the studio, anything goes. You're the first person to say that. Where they say live, anything goes. The studio is more controlled. This is the opposite. It's great to hear that for once.
Well, especially with this album, the environment that we were in was just really good for that. The engineer, his name is Ben Ramsdahl, and he works for this place called Juggernaut Audio, and I've like known him since I was a kid. So it was a very safe environment. Just him and the dudes I play with that already know me real well. Mm-hmm. It was fucking awesome. The album was mixed and mastered by Arthur Rizek. I don't want to leave that out, but yeah, I think this experience was, we were really able to dig deep for this shit.
Awesome. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time. Great to talk to you again. Is there just anything else? Obviously, thanks to the virus that I choose not to name on my outlet. Is there just anything with Primitive Man that you would like to promote? Like, can we maybe be seeing some live streams of the new material, or I'd imagine we'll be seeing you on the road again when this is all over, right?
Yeah, if we can all get back to touring someday, you'll definitely see us. But as far as live stream goes, it's not the same without the loud amps, and being oppressed by sound is the goal. So we can't really do that for you with a live stream,
Mm-hmm. I mean, you put your speakers up all the way. I mean, I love pissing my neighbors off with those live streams.
I mean, I guarantee you that our amps are way louder than your stereo.
Challenge accepted. You've heard it here. You've heard it here on this interview. Challenge accepted. We got to do a part 3 interview and try to make it video, and we'll try to outdo everybody.
when we can come back, I'll definitely take you up on that shit.
All right, yeah. And people will be listening into that stream with their headphones, and then so many people will go deaf. But Ethan, again, thanks so much. Everybody, Ethan of Primitive Man. Be sure to pick up the new album Immersion, coming out very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.